Hey, how you doing? Justin back with you today for a new exercise which I call perfect fast changes. Now this was kind of an accidental discovery I learned in my left-handed practice, where 1 minute changes and chord perfect practice weren't kind of coming together as well as they did for the very beginner stuff when I was learning these, new chords. And a little bit when I was doing some of the consolidation there for grade 1 as well, is where I first discovered this kind of idea. Now, 1 minute changes, the idea is getting the fingers moving as fast as possible. Okay, so really just working on scrambling between the chords, not really worrying about if the chords if the chords aren't perfect or you hit the wrong strings or whatever. And chord perfect practice is spending a lot of care and attention trying to get the notes exactly right. And in most cases, they kind of come together. If you're practicing both those things an equal amount, you end up having perfect fast changes. But sometimes I think it needs a little bit of individual attention for perfect fast changes. So what I started doing is picking two chords and changing between them as fast as I could, but making sure the chords were coming out perfectly. Now, the point is that if you are playing a song with two chords in it, usually you're going to be on the one chord for at least a bar, if not a couple of bars, before you change. And in that sort of context, it's harder to really focus on an individual chord change. So I'm calling these perfect fast changes, PFC initials in the practice routines. And the idea would literally be, take your chord, get my thumb back around the back like I'm telling you, trying to do what I say, and changing, say, to that G, that's a particularly difficult chord change. Now, I'm not going and just letting it be all sloppy and not quite right. I'm doing the chord and I'm strumming slightly slower. Here's the tip. Change. So what you'll find is if you do that slightly slower strum, you'll hear the notes in the chord and you'll hear if it's not coming out right, you'll start to hear that the notes are getting a little bit wonky. Especially after you've done a little bit of practice on this and you get used to this kind of the drag of the pick going across the strings. Doesn't have to be. I mean, as I got better at it, I felt like I could strum a bit more normally and still hear whether the chord was coming out right or not. Okay? Now you can time yourself still, you can put a timer on, keep a track of your changes, but the difference between this and the 1 minute changes is really striving for the chords to be sounding excellent and not being satisfied with some of the notes ringing out or buzzy notes or any of that sort of stuff. You really want to be aiming now for the chords to be sounding really good as often as you can. Sometimes when you're playing a song, chords are going to get a bit fluffy, whatever. You still don't want to be critical of yourself, but you want to strive for the chords to be as perfect as you can. So you set your timer, go, you go one chord, two chord, trying to get the air changes in if you can. Just really working on getting those chord changes really nice, getting the chords sounding really good every time. If you can get it up a little bit, that's great. I'm finding I'm muting, when I'm playing it this way, I'm muting between the chords with my strumming hand. I don't remember being able to do that when I was practicing it left-handed, so I'm going to try and stop myself from doing it now. That's probably more like what it's going to sound like with some of the strings kind of ringing between the changes. That's fine. C, that big G is another good one to practice, you'll find. That's a difficult change, right? C to the big G. Of course, you're unlikely to do that particular one because you'd go C to G that way just because it's loads easier, and I've just dropped my pick, that's okay. The point is that if you need practice on the chords and the 1 minute changes aren't doing it for you and the chord perfect practice and you still feel like you need something, then this is a fantastic exercise and one that I definitely recommend that you insert into your practice routine.